The crystal towers of Velthera Prime burned bright orange against the dark sky. Admiral Zexton stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching his home world die. The massive enemy vessels hung in space like black clouds, raining death upon everything he had ever loved. "Sir, the eastern cities are falling," reported his communications officer. The young Veltheran's voice shook with fear. "The Korthic forces have broken through our last defense line." Zexton closed his 4 eyes and took a deep breath. His people were known across the galaxy as healers and farmers, not warriors. They had never wanted to fight anyone. But the Korthic Empire showed no mercy to peaceful species. They consumed worlds like hungry beasts, leaving nothing but empty space behind. "How many ships do we have left?" Sexton asked. 47, sir. Down from 300 at the start of the siege. 3 months. They had held out for 3 months against impossible odds. The Korthek fleet numbered in the thousands. Each of their bioships was 3 times larger than the biggest Veltheron vessel. Their weapons could melt through metal like it was soft butter. "Send another distress signal on all frequencies," Sexton ordered. "Someone must hear us." Far away, on the edge of human space, Commander Lisa Martinez sat in the communication room of the UES Dakota. She was drinking her morning coffee when the alien transmission came through the speakers. The words were strange, but the universal translator made them clear. "This is Admiral Zexton of the Veltheron Defense Fleet. Our world is under attack. The Korthic Empire has surrounded our home system. We cannot hold much longer. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need help. Our people are dying." Lisa nearly dropped her coffee cup. She had heard stories about the Korthic Empire. They were like a plague that spread from star to star, destroying everything in their path. No one had ever stopped them. She ran to the bridge where Captain Jake Sullivan was studying star charts. Jake was a tough man with gray hair and scars from the Centauri campaigns. He had seen more battles than most people could imagine. "Captain, you need to hear this," Lisa said, playing the alien message. Jake listened with a serious face. When the message ended, he was quiet for a long moment. "The Velthera," he said finally. "They saved us during the Titan colony plague. Millions of our people would have died without their medical knowledge. What do we do, sir? We pay our debts." Jake said firmly. He turned to his communications officer. "Get me Admiral Stone at Fleet Command, Priority Alpha." Within an hour, Admiral Patricia Stone was studying the tactical data on her command screen. The numbers looked bad, very bad. The Korthic had over 2,000 ships surrounding the Veltheron system. Humanity's entire fleet was less than 300 vessels. But Patricia Stone had not become an admiral by backing down from impossible fights. She looked at the faces of her senior staff gathered around the holographic display. These were good people, brave people who had sworn to protect the innocent. "The Velthera are our allies," she said. 5 years ago, they could have let the Titan plague wipe us out. Instead, they shared their medical secrets and saved millions of human lives. Now they need us. Captain Ben Carter spoke up. "Admiral, the odds are 10 to 1 against us. The Korthic ships are massive. Our intelligence reports say they're part machine, part living creature. We've never fought anything like them." "That's exactly why we might win," Patricia replied. "They've never fought anything like us either." She activated the fleet-wide communication system. Across human space, ship captains received the mobilization order. It was the largest military operation in human history. Operation Starfall would send every available warship to the Veltheran system. On the USS Houston, Captain Ben Carter gathered his crew. Chief Engineer Karen Thompson checked the engine readouts, while Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez plotted jump coordinates. These were experienced soldiers who had served together for years. "Listen up," Ben told his crew. We're heading into the biggest fight any of us has ever seen. The aliens we're going to help are good people. They don't deserve what's happening to them. And the enemy we're facing has destroyed 17 star systems in 2 years. The crew was silent. They understood what this meant. Many of them might not come home. But we're humans, Ben continued. We don't abandon our friends. We don't let bullies win. And we sure as hell don't give up without a fight. Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. On the U.S. Liberty, Commander Amy Walsh briefed her fighter pilots. On the U.S. Phoenix, Fleet Admiral Kevin Murphy reviewed battle plans with his tactical officers. Every ship, every crew member knew the stakes. The Velthera had been peaceful for thousands of years. Their crystal cities were works of art that took centuries to grow. Their gardens produced medicines that could cure diseases no one else understood. They had never hurt anyone. The Korthic Empire cared nothing for beauty or peace. Their bioships consumed everything they touched, turning planets into lifeless rocks. They had no mercy, no honor, no humanity. Back on Velthera Prime, the situation grew worse by the hour. The crystal towers that had stood for 10,000 years crumbled under Korthic energy weapons. Civilians fled underground, but even the deep shelters were not safe from the alien assault. Admiral Zex then received reports that made his heart heavy. The western continent was lost. The great healing centers were destroyed. The botanical gardens that fed half the galaxy were burning. Sir, his communications officer called out, I'm getting something strange on the long-range sensors. What is it? Ships, sir. Lots of them. Coming out of hyperspace at the edge of our system. Zex then felt a moment of hope, then fear. Korthic reinforcements? No, sir. The signatures are different. Smaller ships moving in formation. I'm getting identification signals now. The young officer's voice filled with wonder. Sir, they're human ships. Hundreds of them. For the first time in 3 months, Admiral Zex then allowed himself to smile. The humans had come. Against impossible odds. Across vast distances, they had come to help. Perhaps his people had a chance. After all, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm of silver and steel. 237 warships took position at the edge of the Veltheran system. It was the largest force humanity had ever assembled, and they had come to save a world that was not their own. The real battle was about to begin. The human fleet spread across space like a metal cloud. Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Hughes Dakota, watching the massive Korthic ships turn toward them. Each enemy vessel was as big as a small city, covered in what looked like living tissue that pulsed with green light. My God, whispered Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez. They're huge. Size isn't everything, Jake replied, but his voice was tight. He had fought in many battles, but nothing like this. The Korthic bioships were unlike any technology he had ever seen. They moved like living creatures, not machines. Admiral Patricia Stone's voice came through the communication system from her flagship, the Hughes Phoenix. All ships, this is Admiral Stone. We knew this would not be easy. The enemy has numbers and size. But we have something they don't expect. We have human courage and human cunning. Commander Lisa Martinez checked her weapon systems. The new fusion torpedoes were loaded and ready. These weapons had never been tested in real battle, but the scientists promised they could punch through anything. Torpedo tubes 1 through 6 loaded, Captain, she reported. Good. We're going to need every advantage we can get. The Korthic fleet was already moving. 2,000 bioships began to turn away from Velthera Prime to face this new threat. Their movements were smooth and coordinated, like a school of deadly fish. On the Hughes Houston, Captain Ben Carter gathered his fighter pilots in the hangar bay. These were young men and women who had trained for years, but most had never seen real combat. Listen up, Ben told them. Those big ships out there think they can scare us with their size. They're wrong. We're fast, we're smart, and we're angry. They hurt our friends, and now they're going to pay for it. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Foster stepped forward. He was the squadron leader, a pilot who had flown missions against pirates and smugglers. What's the plan, Captain? Hit and run, Ben replied. Get in fast, hit them hard, and get out before they can respond. Don't try to fight them head to head. Use your speed and stay alive. Major Kelly Barnes nodded from the back of the group. She commanded the bomber squadron, flying the heavy fighters loaded with the new fusion torpedoes. What about the big guns, sir? That's where you come in. Once the fighters create confusion, you slip in and hit their weak spots. Our intelligence says their bio-armor is thickest on the front and sides. Try for the rear sections. The pilots filed out to their ships. Ryan climbed into his fighter and started the engines. Around him, dozens of other small craft prepared for launch. These ships were tiny compared to the enemy vessels, but they were fast and maneuverable. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Hughes Phoenix, Fleet Admiral Kevin Murphy studied the enemy formations. The Corthic ships moved in predictable patterns, staying close together for mutual protection. It was good strategy against a normal enemy, but humans were not normal. Communications, Kevin called. Get me Captain Carter on the Houston. Sir, Captain Carter here. Ben, I want you to take your destroyers straight at their center formation. Make them think we're going for a direct assault. Understood, Admiral. We'll give them something to think about. All other ships, prepare for micro-jump maneuvers on my mark. Engineer Paul Stevens worked frantically in the engine room of the UES Liberty. The micro-jump system was new technology that allowed ships to make very short hyperspace jumps. It was dangerous because the calculations had to be perfect, but it would let human ships appear inside enemy formations. Power levels are good, Paul reported to the bridge, but I can't guarantee how long we can keep this up. These jumps put a lot of stress on the engines. Commander Amy Walsh nodded. Just give us what you can, Paul. We need every edge we can get. The battle began when the human fighters launched. Ryan Foster led his squadron straight toward the nearest Corthic bioship. The enemy vessel was so large it blocked out the stars. Its surface rippled and moved like skin, and weapon ports opened like mouths. Stay tight, Ryan called to his pilots. Remember your training. Green energy beams lashed out from the Corthic ship. The weapons moved slowly, designed to hit large targets, not small fighters. Ryan's squadron danced between the beams, their engines screaming at full power. Torpedo run, Kelly Barnes called out as her bombers swept in behind the fighters. The fusion torpedoes streaked toward the bioship's rear section, each one carrying enough power to level a city block. The weapons hit with brilliant flashes of light. The bioship's living armor bubbled and burned, but the vessel kept moving. It would take many more hits to bring down something that large. All ships execute microjump, Admiral Stone commanded. Across the fleet, human warships vanished from one position and appeared in another. The Hughes Dakota materialized right next to a Corthic vessel, so close that Jake could see the alien creatures moving inside the transparent sections. Fire everything. Jake shouted. The Dakota's weapons lit up the darkness. Laser cannons, railguns, and missile pods all fired at once. The Corthic ship's side armor cracked and split, green fluid leaking into space like alien blood. Then the Dakota jumped again, vanishing before the enemy could return fire. Navigator Tracy Young plotted jump after jump from her station on the UES Denver. Each calculation had to be perfect. Too close, and they would crash into the enemy ship. Too far, and their weapons would be useless. Jump coordinates locked, she reported. Execute. Captain Steve Johnson ordered. The Denver appeared, behind a Korthak command vessel, and unleashed a full spread of fusion torpedoes. The explosions lit up the bioship's rear section, and for the first time, the humans saw one of the massive vessels stagger, but the Korthak were learning. Their bioships began to move faster, trying to predict where the human ships would appear next. Some of them split apart into smaller vessels, making it harder for the humans to target them. "They're adapting," Commander Helen Ross reported from the Hughes, Montana. "The enemy ships are changing their formations." Admiral Stone watched the tactical display. The battle was going better than expected, but it was far from over. The Korthak still had overwhelming numbers, and their bioships were incredibly tough. "All ships, change tactics," she ordered. "Stop the micro-jumping. It's using too much power. Switch to conventional attack patterns. Use our speed advantage." The human fleet spread out across the battlefield. Small, fast ships darted between the massive Korthak vessels like angry wasps. Every time the enemy tried to focus on one target, two more would appear from different directions. Dr. Michelle Taylor worked in the medical bay of the Hughes Denver, treating wounded pilots who had made it back from the battle. Some had burns from energy weapons. Others had injuries from hard maneuvers in their fighters. "How's it going out there?" she asked a young pilot. "We're holding our own," he replied, wincing as she bandaged his arm. "But Doc, these aliens, they're not like anything we've ever fought. Their ships are alive. When we hit them, they bleed." Medical Officer Dr. Michelle Taylor had heard similar reports from other wounded. The Korthak bioships were indeed living creatures, or at least part living. It was disturbing, but it might also be useful information. The battle raged for hours. Human ships danced through space, hitting and running, never staying in one place long enough for the enemy to pin them down. The Korthak fought back with devastating energy weapons, but they were too slow to catch the quick human vessels. Slowly, very slowly, the tide began to turn. The human fleet was taking losses, but they were giving back much more than they received. Several Korthak bioships drifted in space, dark and lifeless. Others showed serious damage, but there were still too many of them. Even with their advantages, the humans could not win through conventional battle alone. They needed something more, something the enemy would not expect. That something was coming, though no one knew it yet. The battle had been going for 18 hours. Captain Jake Sullivan felt exhaustion pulling at his mind, but he could not rest. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with grim determination. The Hughes Dakota had jumped in and out of combat dozens of times, each attack wearing down both ship and crew. Captain, Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez, called from his station. "We're getting a distress signal from a Veltheron medical ship. They're caught between two Korthak vessels." Jake looked. At the tactical display, the alien medical ship was small and defenseless, clearly marked with healing symbols. The two Korthak bioships were closing in like predators hunting prey. "Change course," Jake ordered. "We're going to help them." Commander Lisa Martinez looked up from her weapons console. "Sir, we're low on fusion torpedoes, and our engines are running hot from all the microjumps." "Then we'll have to be creative," Jake replied. The Dakota streaked toward the trapped Veltheran ship. The two Korthak vessels were massive, their bioarmor pulsing with that strange green light. They moved slowly but steadily, confident in their overwhelming size advantage. "Get me close to the first one," Jake told his pilot, "close enough to touch." The Dakota dove toward the nearest Korthak ship. Green energy beams reached out for them, but the human vessel was too fast and too small. At the last second, Jake ordered emergency reverse thrust. The Dakota stopped just meters from the bioship's surface. This close, they could see the alien. Vessel's skin moving like it was breathing. Strange veins of light pulsed beneath the surface. "Fire everything we have," Jake commanded Dot at point-blank range. The Dakota's weapons tore through the bio-armor like paper. The Korthik ship convulsed and began to drift, dark fluid leaking from the wounds. The second enemy vessel turned to pursue. The Dakota, but the human ship was already speeding away. The Veltheron medical ship escaped, its crew sending grateful messages on all frequencies. Meanwhile, on the U's Houston, Captain Ben Carter was dealing with a different problem. His ship had taken damage from a lucky Korthik shot, and Chief Engineer Karen Thompson was struggling to keep the engines running. "We've got plasma leaks on decks 4 and 5, Karen reported over the comm system. "I need time to fix them." "Time is something we don't have," Ben replied, watching 3 Korthik ships moving toward his position. That was when Major Alex Turner had an idea. The Marine commander had been watching the battle from the observation deck, noting how the Korthik ships moved and fought. "Captain," Alex said, arriving on the bridge, "I think we've been approaching this wrong. We keep hitting these ships from the outside, but what if we went inside?" Ben turned to look at him. "You want to board one of those things? Think about it, sir. They're part machine, part living creature. That means they have to have some kind of control system, some kind of brain. If we could get inside and damage that." It was a crazy idea, but then again, this whole battle was crazy. Ben looked at the nearest Korthik vessel. It was wounded, drifting slowly with parts of its bio-armor torn away. "Get your Marines ready," Ben decided. "We're going fishing." Hey. Houston moved carefully toward the damaged Korthik ship. Using their cutting beams, they opened a hole in the bio-armor large enough for a boarding party. Alex Turner led 12 Marines through the breach, their weapons ready for anything. Inside the alien vessel, the corridors pulsed like blood vessels. The walls were warm to the touch and seemed to move slightly, as if they were alive. Strange. Lights flickered overhead, and the air smelled like copper and ozone. "This place gives me the creeps," Sergeant Julie Parker muttered, keeping her rifle pointed forward. "Stay alert," Alex warned. "We don't know what we'll find in here." They moved deeper into the ship, following the largest corridor toward what they hoped was the control center. The walls around them throbbed with that green light, and occasionally they could hear sounds like breathing or heartbeats. Finally, they reached a large chamber filled with strange machinery. But it was not really machinery at all. It looked more like a giant brain, with tubes and wires connecting to pulsing organic structures. "My God," Alex whispered. "It really is alive." But there was something else in the chamber. Creatures that looked like the Korthek they had seen in intelligence reports, but these ones were different. They moved stiffly, like puppets, and their eyes were empty of intelligence. "They're not in control," Julie realized. "Something else is controlling them." Alex looked closer at the brain-like structure in the center of the chamber. There, attached to the main mass, was a smaller creature that did not look like the others. It was black and spiny, with too many eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. "That's not a Korthik," Alex said. "That thing is controlling them." He raised his weapon and fired. The black creature screamed, a sound like metal tearing. Instantly, the Korthik in the chamber stopped moving. They blinked, looked around in confusion, and began making sounds that might have been words. Back on the human ships, something amazing happened. The Korthik vessel that Alex's team had boarded suddenly stopped attacking. Instead, it began transmitting on all frequencies, sending messages that the universal translators could not understand at first. Dr. Robin Clark, the chief science officer on the U's Phoenix, worked frantically to decode the transmissions. She was a brilliant woman who had studied alien languages for 20 years. "Admiral," she called to Patricia Stone, "I'm getting something incredible. The Korthik ship is trying to communicate, They're saying they're sorry. Sorry? Patricia could not believe it. The transmissions are confusing, but I think they're saying they were not in control. Something was making them attack against their will. Admiral Patricia Stone stared at the tactical display. If this was true, it changed everything. The Korthik were not evil conquerors. They were victims, just like the Velthera. On the Veltheran command ship, Admiral Zexton was getting similar reports from his scientists. Dr. Tisara, their leading expert on biosciences, had been studying the Korthik attacks for months. Admiral, she said in her musical voice, the human discovery matches our theories. We have long suspected that the Korthik were infected by some kind of parasitic intelligence. The pattern of their attacks, the way they consumed worlds completely, it was not natural behavior for any species we know. You mean they're sick? Zexton asked. More than sick. They are enslaved. The parasite takes over their minds and uses their bodies to spread itself to other worlds. This information was quickly shared with the human fleet. Captain Nick Williams of the UES Seattle was the first to understand what it meant. If the Korthik are being controlled by parasites, he told his crew, then we're not fighting an empire. We're fighting a disease, and diseases can be cured. Dr. Robin Clark worked with Dr. Tisara through the communication link, sharing data and theories. The Veltheran scientist had spent years studying the parasite infection, trying to find a way to help the Korthik. We need to find the source, Dr. Tisara explained. The parasites must have a central control system somewhere in this star system. If we can destroy it, we might be able to free all the infected Korthik at once. Like cutting off the head of a snake. Robin understood. Long-range sensors began sweeping the system, looking for anything unusual. It was Commander Helen Ross on the USS Montana who found it. Hidden in the asteroid belt was a massive structure that did not show up on normal scans. It's organic, Helen reported. Bigger than anything we've seen, but it's trying to hide itself. The thing is using some kind of stealth technology. Admiral Stone looked at the sensor data. The hidden structure was enormous, probably the size of a small moon. If this was the source of the parasite infection, destroying it would not be easy. All ships, she announced to the fleet. We have a new target, and this time we're not just fighting to win a battle. We're fighting to free an entire species from slavery. The real enemy was finally revealed. Now the hard part would be reaching it through thousands of still infected Korthik ships that would fight to protect their master. The liberation of the Korthik was about to begin. The massive biostation hung in the asteroid belt like a cancerous growth. Admiral Patricia Stone studied the sensor readings from her flagship, the UES Phoenix. The parasite control center was huge, easily the size of Earth's moon, and covered in the same pulsing bio-armor as the Korthik ships. It's heavily defended, reported Captain Ben Carter from the USS Houston. I count at least 300 Korthik vessels surrounding it, plus automated defense systems. Dr. Robin Clark worked alongside Dr. Tisara through the communication link, finalizing their bioweapon. The Veltheran scientist had provided the biological knowledge, while Robin handled the technical aspects. The weapon is ready, Robin announced. But we need to deliver it directly to the station's core. The parasites have to be destroyed at their source, or they'll just rebuild somewhere else. Admiral Stone nodded grimly. That means someone has to get through all those defenses and plant the weapon inside that thing. Captain Greg Miller stepped forward. The commander of the USS Montana was a quiet man with steady hands and nerves of steel. My ship can do it, Admiral. We've got the best stealth systems in the fleet. It's a suicide mission, Greg. You know. That, maybe. But if we don't try, millions of Korthik stay enslaved forever. Plus, the parasites will just keep spreading to other worlds. This ends here. Meanwhile, the freed Korthek from the ship that Major Alex Turner had boarded were providing crucial intelligence. Their leader, a being called Commander Vorthek, spoke through the universal translator in a deep, rumbling voice. "The control station has weak points," Vorthek explained. "My people built it under parasite control, but we still remember. The central core is protected by neural barriers, but there are maintenance tunnels that lead directly to the heart." "Captain." Jake Sullivan listened carefully. "How big are these tunnels?" "Large enough for your small ships, but too small for our bio-vessels. The parasites never expected anyone to attack from inside." A plan began to form. The Montana would use its stealth systems to approach the station, while the rest of the fleet created a massive distraction. Once inside, Greg Miller and his crew would navigate the maintenance tunnels to deliver the bioweapon directly to the parasite core. "It's crazy enough to work," Jake admitted. "All the best plans are," Patricia Stone replied. The attack began at dawn, ship time. The entire human fleet, along with the freed Korthek vessels, charged toward the biostation. It was the largest space battle in galactic history, with thousands of ships engaged across millions of cubic kilometers. Captain Nick Williams led the first wave in his destroyer squadron. The U Seattle and 5 other ships dove straight at the station's defenses, drawing fire from the automated weapon systems. Green energy beams lashed out like angry lightning, but the human ships were fast and hard to hit. "Stay spread out," Nick ordered his squadron. "Make them think we're going for a direct assault." Behind them, the main fleet followed. Captain Ben Carter's Houston led the heavy cruisers, while Commander Amy Walsh coordinated the fighter squadrons. The space around the biostation erupted in explosions and energy beams. The freed Korthek ships fought alongside the humans, their bioweapons now turned against their former masters. Commander Vorthek's vessel fired bolt after bolt of green energy at the station's defensive arrays. "This feels good," Vorthek transmitted to the human fleet. "For too long, we have been forced to destroy. Now we fight to create freedom." In the middle of the chaos, the U's Montana slipped through the battle lines like a ghost. Captain Greg Miller's stealth ship was invisible to most sensors, just another piece of debris in the asteroid field. "Approaching the station," Greg reported. "On a secure channel, beginning penetration sequence." Chief Engineer Paul Stevens worked frantically to keep the stealth systems running. The technology drew enormous power, and they could not maintain it for long. "Stealth holding," Paul reported. "But we've got maybe 30 minutes before the generators overload." Navigator Tracy Young guided the Montana through the asteroid belt toward the biostation surface. Up close, the alien structure was even more horrifying. The entire surface rippled and moved like living flesh, and occasionally they could see what looked like eyes opening and closing in the bio-armor. "Found the maintenance entrance," Tracy announced. "It's just like Vorthek described. A tunnel leading into the station's interior." The Montana carefully entered the tunnel. Inside, the walls pulsed with that familiar green light, and strange fluids dripped from the ceiling. It was like flying through the veins of some enormous creature. "This place is alive," whispered Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez, who had volunteered. "For the mission. Don't think about it," Greg advised. "Focus on the mission." They flew deeper into the station, following the tunnel system toward the core. Behind them, they could hear the battle raging in space. Their friends were fighting and dying to give them this chance. Commander Tony Lewis was one of those friends. His ship, the U's Boston, had taken heavy damage while protecting the Montana's approach. With his engines failing and weapons offline, Tony made a decision that would save the mission. "All ships, this is the Boston," he transmitted. "We're going to ram the station's main defense array. Cover the Montana's exit route." "Tony, don't do it," Patricia Stone called out. We can find another way. No time, Admiral. Tell my family I did my duty. For humanity and freedom. The Boston's engines flared to full power one last time. The damaged ship accelerated toward the biostation's largest weapon cluster and struck it in a brilliant explosion. The defense array went dark, creating a gap in the station's protective fire. Inside the tunnels, the Montana finally reached the core chamber. It was a vast space filled with the most disgusting sight any of them had ever seen. Thousands of black, spiny parasites covered every surface, their multiple eyes glowing with evil intelligence. In the center, a massive parasite the size of a building pulsed with dark energy. That's the master parasite, Greg realized. The one controlling all the others. Dr. Robin Clark's bioweapon was loaded into a special torpedo. The weapon would spread through the station's neural network like a virus, destroying the parasites while leaving their Korthic hosts unharmed. Torpedo loaded and ready, reported Commander Lisa Martinez, who had also volunteered for the mission. Fire, Greg ordered. The bioweapon torpedo streaked across the chamber and struck the master parasite directly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature began to scream, a sound so terrible that the humans had to cover their ears. The scream spread through the station's bio-network. Every parasite in the facility began to convulse and die. The effect rippled outward through space, transmitted to every infected Korthic ship in the system. It's working, Lisa called out. The parasites are dying. Across the battlefield, something miraculous happened. The Korthic ships stopped firing. One by one, they began transmitting messages of confusion, then understanding, then gratitude. The entire Korthic fleet had been freed from parasitic control in a matter of minutes. The Montana barely escaped the collapsing biostation. As the parasites died, their control structure fell apart, and the entire facility began to tear itself to pieces. Montana to fleet, Greg transmitted. Mission accomplished. The parasites are destroyed. In the aftermath, 3 species worked together to clean up the remains of the parasite station. Human, Veltheran, and Korthic ships moved through the asteroid field, making sure no trace of the infection survived. Admiral Zexthan of the Velthera transmitted his gratitude to the human fleet. You came to save us, he said, but you did much more. You freed an entire species from slavery. Commander Vorthak spoke for his people. The Korthic will never forget this debt. Humanity showed us that freedom is worth fighting for, worth dying for. We are no longer enemies, but brothers. Admiral Patricia Stone looked at the tactical display, now showing friendly contacts where once there had been only enemies. This is just the beginning, she announced to the combined fleet. Our intelligence indicates there are 12 other systems with similar parasite stations. We have work to do. Captain Lavra Green of the UES Seattle began establishing communication protocols between the 3 species. Diplomats and scientists worked together to plan their next moves against the parasite threat. The galaxy had learned something important that day. When good people stood together, when they fought not just for victory, but for freedom and justice, even the most terrible enemies could be defeated. The war against the parasites was far from over. But now humanity did not fight alone. 3 species, united by shared values and mutual respect, would carry the light of freedom to every dark corner of the galaxy. And somewhere in the depths of space, other enslaved species waited for liberation.